welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us on our 123rd episode of the podcast, where we get a chance to talk to Jad Prachniak. Coach Prachniak is in his first season as the head coach at North Alabama University. Prior to that, he had spent time at the University of Delaware as the associate head coach and recruiting coordinator. Before that, spent 9 seasons at Division II school Westchester University, and where he was a 2-time NCAA champion. They won a national championship in 2012 and in 2017. He was the first and only NCAA school in Pennsylvania to win a national championship. Coach Prachniak discusses a ton of stuff during our talk as he's continued to kind of grow the program at North Alabama, touching base about his experience winning a national championship and developing his guys at Westchester as well as at Delaware. And he's also spent some time before Westchester where he was the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at William & Mary. So we touched base, got a great experience, and it's very candid, very authentic, real. He does a great job of just the vocabulary and words that he uses. I think guys can think about it differently, and it's a lot of times it's just a matter of it's the same game, but just how we can go about it different. How might we say it differently? And Coach Prachniak does a great job of really explaining those things and kind of giving us a different perspective on how he talks. And that's what's so great about learning from other people. So really enjoyed that. Really can't thank him enough. Also really just need to thank our sponsors at Netting Pros. Netting professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Netting professionals specialize in the design, fabrication, and installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital graphic wall padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting professionals continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact them today at 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for all their latest products and projects. So big shout out to those guys, Will Miner and the guys at Netting Pros. Thank you so much for helping us with the podcast and spread the word. And Coach Prachniak, again, one more time, thanking you for all the great time that you spent, touch base about full program, culture, base running, hitting, fielding, pitching, getting into a ton of stuff from just making a lineup. So it was just great conversations, really enjoyed it. And I think you guys will as well. So here he is, head coach at North Alabama University, Coach Jad Prachniak.
PSAC baseball, and even my baseball background, playing at Rhode Island, Division I school, being an assistant at William & Mary, Division I school, and then my introduction to the PSAC was 2012. And I heard good things, going into the job, heard really good things about our roster in the league, but living it for 9 years, PSAC baseball is especially the front end of that league, it is just the definition of good baseball. And I'd always say then, from a recruiting standpoint, if you went out to see blank uniforms, if you watched the Friday matchup in the PSAC of two of the top teams, you wouldn't leave there saying oh, those are a couple of Division II teams. You would leave there saying oh, those are two really good college baseball teams. And that's the best way to sum it up. And I think the draft history speaks for itself. But it's even the quality of coaching, style of play stuff. It's a tough league. You know what I mean? It really is. And I think it forces you to be a good coach because if you can't keep up, there's too many talented coaches and players in that league to survive. It truly is. So it's good. And I think it speaks to the talent pool in the state. And Pennsylvania is a pretty populated state. So you have a lot of people in the state. And the fact there's a lot of good, affordable options for kids, and I think now basically the league does its recruiting for itself. That has been so good for so long that I certainly think kids within the state of Pennsylvania know how good PSAC baseball is for sure.
And then so then how have you compared it from like where you're at now and to make the transition with North
Sure,
Alabama?
and that's even going back the last couple of years at Delaware, and now we're 7 games into this season. But it's obviously having a chance to work with our group here, and it's the gist of it is the high level Division II teams could compete with, I would say, 90% of Division I teams. You know what I mean? And I would never pretend like our best teams at Westchester are going to go win the SEC. I would never pretend that. But at the same time, like I truly felt like we could compete with the majority of Division I teams when I was there. And that's the same. You know what I mean? I think the best teams in the PSAC would be very competitive in the Atlantic Sun. Are they going to have more talent than Liberty? Probably not. But could they compete on most weekends? They probably could. So that's kind of the quick summary of that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a great perspective, Coach. Like, and the Power Fives is a different story, like you said. But when in terms of other conferences that you're looking at, that the really good Division IIs and what that is, it's such a great thing. Because I think you hear a lot more of it now about having a good fit, or as much of the portal is like you need to go somewhere you can play.
For sure. Yep.
So, oh man, that's good. And so, and then, have you found like that? What kind of different challenges now do you have in the South? That you might have had in the North.
Yeah. So I think some of the challenges here, but it's also, in a way, I'm going to spin it as one of our strengths is being new to the area. It's forcing us to be really good at finding people, finding players, creating relationships. So our network grows down here for sure. I think one of our strategies from a recruiting standpoint is we don't want to settle. So we are definitely shooting high from a recruiting standpoint, and that's part of the messaging to the recruits themselves. And we're definitely losing out on some guys to some very good programs, and it's to be expected. But I feel like for me, I'm comfortable with that, getting some no's along the way. And I even said that at Westchester and other places I've been. If you don't get some no's in recruiting, you're probably not pushing the envelope enough. Like you really want to, somewhere along the way, you're going to get some no's because you're trying to identify a kid that has some really good options, and you can't get them all. So it is being new here. It's still calibrating. All right, what exactly is our fit? Like what exactly are we targeting? And when I say that, as part of that is just roster, getting to know our current roster as part of it. And now that we're 7 games into the season, like we're getting a better feel for things for sure. And some of the stuff is from a depth standpoint at certain positions, pretty obvious. Like we knew that from the jump on paper. But there's some other stuff as you get into a season, start to try to figure out, okay, can this guy hold down this position for 3 years? Or are we going to have to look for somebody else to help out at that position? And that's kind of the stage we're at right now, just getting a feel for our roster as a whole.
Mm-hmm. How much how much has the portal really affected you?
Sure. So during the transition, the month between Coach Keene, the previous coach here, retiring and me getting hired, it's basically a calendar month. And there were a handful of guys that transferred out of here. Some of those guys were some of the better performers from the year before. So me coming in, it's, we just lost a couple arms and a couple positional guys that were basically immediate voids that we had to fill. So just how the ease at which those guys were able to transfer. The good thing on my end coming in is like I could access the portal to try to find some guys to fill some of those holes. So I would say this summer we brought in, and some of those guys are through the transfer portal. 2 of the guys were JUCO guys. But we brought in 6 guys this summer to help fill some of those voids. And 4 of those guys came through the portal. And I think moving forward, we definitely want to be aware of who's in the portal. And we definitely want to identify needs where the portal could help us. But I think big picture recruiting, we want to build it with high school guys is the idea. But the portal is a supplemental piece to basically add as needed at certain positions. And I would say one of the benefits of the portal down the road, as we build things up here, is if you have a year where you get hit with the draft and maybe you lose a couple juniors, the nice thing about the portal is you don't have to get young. Like that doesn't make you have to go young. Like
Sure.
If you wanted to have somebody come in to fill one of those spots, and even if you're not replacing a true draft guy with another draft guy, maybe you can get like somebody with some seasoned experience that can help basically to lessen that blow essentially. So I think from that standpoint, it's nice. And you see it. I mean, most places, are at some level doing something in the portal. And I'm not saying everybody, but I think you have to be at least aware of who's in there. And it's the other thing too, as I mentioned, is you get to learn your roster. And what I think right now at the end of February compared to what I'm going to think in May, there could be very different thoughts. And at that point, our needs might change, and we might have to go target. Something else, and the portal can help with some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's like you said. Even I think in the situations where you weren't expecting it, a guy like you guys say you get hit by the draft, multiple guys, and you're like, oh my goodness, and you weren't expecting. You've got your future classes coming up, but like, hey, my goodness, like right now, like we just lost a guy.
Sure, exactly, and it's that simple. And sometimes it's an injury thing. Maybe somebody's down for a year and you need help. So it is. And as I mentioned, like still in a perfect world, you're identifying those high school guys that can help you. You have at least 3 years to work with them, hopefully, or maybe 4 with them. But I do think for us, it's going to be a mix of high school, portal, and then we'll also do some stuff at the junior college level. Like we're in a part of the country with some really, really good junior colleges. And we have a willingness to go outside the area. Like we're still going to go up to the Mid-Atlantic Northeast to try to identify junior college talent as well. And between developing relationships and knowing some of the rosters up there, I know there's very talented players up north that could help us down here.
Sure. Those guys love coming too. I don't know, like, because like I said, the Northeast guys love said, oh, I'd love to go down south and play. Like, is it, I'm just wondering if that's always the case, when they get down there and like,
sure.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think there's, so 2 of the guys that we got, 2 of the transfers we got this summer, one was from Pennsylvania outside of Philadelphia, and another one was from Connecticut, who redshirted at UConn. And again, it's small sample, but I feel like both of those guys have come in, they fit in really well. I think for them, the biggest thing was an opportunity, a chance to get on the field. Both those guys redshirted at other Division I schools. And the arm right now is our Friday night starter. And our third baseman is, who came from UConn, is starting at third and hitting 5th or 6th in our order right now. So I think from them, like getting on the field, that makes life a little bit better. But I think even those guys, the transition of, what was described to them from an opportunity standpoint, but even the setup of this school, like I think it's one of those places that's easy to get acclimated to. And it's not big city, but it's also not so small that it feels like there's nothing to do. I think there's just enough entertainment to kind of keep you occupied. But at the same time, like the speed here is, things don't speed up on guys here. You get to kind of create your own life and your own tempo down here for sure.
Nice. Yeah. And it's because it is very different. It's just different. Like dealing with the cold is different, and not having to deal with that, but yeah, just being really away from home, it's different. 2 hours is something to get in the car, but it's different when you got to plan a day.
Sure.
But so cool, man. Just thinking about like, as you're taking, you spent 9 years at Winchester, your culture just rolling. Like, as you're coming in, like, what is one of the first things? Of course, you can touch base on, you got to get the guys.
Sure.
Good people is always good at any organization, but like, what else are you kind of foundationally doing to grow this North Alabama program?
Sure. I'll give you the simplest, and I say simplest. This is what I'll put in front of them as well. These will be the direct messages to the team, and try to be as concise as possible with it. We try to sum up from a team guideline standpoint is to do the right thing, so that you can attach that to anything on the field, off the field, in the classroom, when you go home for winter break. Like, do the right thing with all your decisions, and the expectation is you're going to do the right thing. With that being said, is when you have 35 college guys, somewhere along the way, somebody's going to slip up, whether it's a baseball thing, an oversleep thing, whatever that might be. There's going to be a moment where somebody doesn't get it right. But the gist of it is you're on to the next, do the right thing and getting it right. So we'll come back to that. We'll lean into that a good amount. The other one, too, is giving guys the comfort to be themselves. And I truly want them to be themselves, but they're in pursuit of becoming the best version of themselves. So I like the different personalities. I like having the ability where you got to mix, and I'm good with that. I don't need everybody to be the exact same way and wired the same way. And I truly feel like the best teams we had at Westchester, we truly had a full mix of personalities. And I think giving them a little bit of room to be themselves, but also like making sure they know, like, we're in pursuit of creating the best version of you during your time here. And the on the field stuff, try to hit on the two things I've always had is 100% focus, 100% effort. Like those are an automatic. This year I just attached, and I've used different versions of it, but just the mantra of just don't flinch. So no matter what is going on in the field, the expectation is your body language can't tip your hand. Like you're not going to flinch at it. So we're looking to play focused, looking to play with effort and not flinch. And I can say, there's a lot of things that people will do or put on paper or say. And I feel like basically any organized coach at any level has great things on paper, whether it's pillars or just this is my philosophy, my core mission. We all can dial one up or a good quote. But like the challenge is like, can you live it? And like, actually, can people feel it and see it anytime they see us play? So that's the mission is like, it's one thing to talk about it, but on your best day and on your worst day, can you be about all these things at all times? So.
What are the things, like you said, when can people see it when they watch you play? Is the big thing that you want them to see is that like the body language?
Big part of it, the focus standpoint of them being dialed in. And some of those things might be checkpoints more for us. And not to say people in the stands won't know of, what the expectation is on each play. Obviously some of the effort stuff we all can see in the ballpark. But there might just be some, on this certain play, your expectation is this. And when it gets to the point where it just basically guys get consumed and so good at doing that, where it's almost self-coached or like they just expect like, no, that's just how we play. Like that's when you got it. And just knowing how competitive the sport is, especially like high-level Division I baseball, they're getting the horses at those Power Fives. And some of those programs are the most meticulous in regards to like style of play and expectations. So for us to close that gap, like, yes, we need to get talented players, but I don't think we're going to ever show up to a field and just out-talent most of the SEC. Or if we expect to win the Atlantic Sun, it's not just going to be because we had the most talented team and nobody could catch up with us. It's got to be like good players and then a ridiculous buy-in to everything else that comes with it. And I think that like attention to detail and focus and effort. And again, it's like the tangible stuff, like you got to go live it. You got to go do it. And like whatever that task is, however mundane it seems, like you just have to get it right every single time.
And when like part of this, because you've grown programs, like let's say at Westchester, like was it a certain year like this effort and focus that you felt like the consistent message kind of rang true and you kind of took over, you kind of got over the hump?
The fortunate thing at Westchester was that was an extremely talented roster that I walked into. There was, it's one guy still playing in the big leagues, is on year 8 in the major leagues. We have another guy that's still throwing professionally in Japan. So like our two horses, like Joey Wendell, who's still in the big leagues, and Joe Gunkel, who pitched in AAA and now he's in Japan. I'll start with the talent there, but both of those guys basically exemplified, one on the mound and one in the field, those things. And I think for that group, like once when those guys were so dialed in, like the rest of the roster kind of fell in line. And I truly feel like this, like I only had 1 year with Joey Wendell as a senior when I was there, but I felt like the guys that played with him, so even those freshmen that played with him, it's like that just became like the identity of part of it too, where he helped basically his style of play and the way he went about it and the way he treated people, like passed on to the future years. And then it just kind of kept rolling over from there. And obviously we had other guys that were leaders on individual teams, but just the gist of year one, that group was so good with it that I think it did stay. And we needed to remind guys along the way, like this is the expectation, and some years are easier than others. So I think even the year when you get it right with the roster turnover, that you're gonna have to recoach it. So you're gonna have to get it to the new guys. And then also like some of the returning guys are gonna have to be reminded of it. And it'll show up in different ways, and I try to be, I can be pretty meticulous with it of like when, like getting on them in different spots. And I think using stuff like that after a win can be really helpful. So like even after their best day or like, oh, good, we just had, and even this weekend, like we had a sweep this weekend and I could dial up a highlight reel, when I say highlight reel, a low light reel of literally a dozen mistakes that we made that could have cost us games over 3 games. And basically the good thing is we got away with it, but we did earn the wins. But the gist of it is like we still have to teach, and like we can't get complacent just because we went 3-0, but like how we got there, like there's some things that we have to tighten up or else it's going to burn us. So I think from that standpoint of just kind of coming back to those messages as often as possible, and just showing them real life examples of our games, like clips of things that we didn't get right. And then even showing some, if we don't have the right clip to show, like finding a clip on the field of this is what it should look like would be the gist of it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, how do you remain consistent with that message of, like, like you said, trying to remind them of the expectations?
Yeah, I think it is as you see them in real time in front of your face, like coming back to it. And then obviously the video piece, and this is something, we do more of it now than we used to probably. We try to get a good amount of stuff on video. The good thing for most of our games, you have a pretty good angle of the whole field. So we're able to pull clips from game action now to show. I think that brings it to life. And obviously it doesn't lie. You know what I mean? Like you show the video and then you can rewind it. And it's not to belittle guys or like, it's just, we want to get it right. And if it happens to be you making the mistake, like coming back to do the right thing, like it's not a personal attack. It's like us as a team trying to get this thing right. So if you're one of the guys getting it wrong too much, there's a good chance you won't be in there. Like eventually, like your spot in the lineup will probably turn over. But we're at the stage now where like, things are for real. Things matter. So it's not fall ball anymore. We're trying to figure things out. Like we're still growing as a team for sure, but like the wins and losses matter now.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're definitely trying to hit on some of those things.
And I was thinking, the video part, say we do it more than we used to. And I think it's good because, how many kids aren't watching videos, in a day? You know what I mean? Where you think of the type of learner that they are. I think they're just hitting the nail on the head there with the video.
That's the one thing that pulls it to life. It really does. And sometimes, and I can see it when you talk to your team, let's say like when I talk to my team now, I can tell by basically eyeballs of the guys that get it, the guys that kind of get it. And I feel like the guys that, as I'm talking about it, I know that they need more help with it. It's almost like they're in class hoping nobody calls on them because they don't really know what's going on kind of deal. And I think, and part of that too is like, I need to teach it on the field at a certain way to connect with them. But you're right. Like that video, it can take something that might take 10 minutes. It can be a 40-second thing. You show a few clips and like, hopefully that'll hit home. Like, oh, I get it now. So.
And like when you do that, coach, because I'm just thinking about like guys like timing wise, like the timing. Will you go in there and dive into that and start breaking it up, or do you have guys like, hey man, I want like you? Is that someone's job to go do that? Like cut the video, like just the specific things that you want to see. Like, are you still diving in there to do that, or you got other guys that are working on that?
Combo. So there's still plenty of times where I'm seeking those things out. So I would say the majority of the time, actually, like I'm trying to find a specific clip, right? I have I'm gonna say a catalog. It's a handful of clips that I do tend to show to my teams. So I have those that I'll lean on pretty much most years. And then if I see something, I'll tag it, or even on Twitter, sometimes you might see a play and you bookmark it and you can come back to it. And even today, actually, I did have my assistant cut up just 3 different base running clips from our weekend. So I just had him cut those up. So we had the ability to show that to the team. So it's, I would say a mix. Some of the stuff I already have, and some stuff I'll seek out, or it's just, asking one of our guys to help find a clip.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, and because it is such a, like you said, you said you did it, you do it more now than what you have in the past. Is that like, because I'm just thinking of like, how would you do it, especially if you're talking to like, the guy, that might not have the facilities and the stuff that you guys have. Like, how could you incorporate it more?
Sure. I think you could do, you could even send, even in a group chat setting, you could send it in that, if it's a clip, like I said, a Twitter clip or something, if there's something that reinforces what you're looking for, I think that's fair game. Just even if it is them looking at their phone to look at it. I think it's probably a worthwhile investment. Even if you invest in a flat screen TV that's like 32 inches, hook your laptop up to it in the dugout.
Wow.
Kind of the same idea. Like I think you can create almost that classroom environment in the dugout. And it's the same line of thinking. Like we have a locker room next to our field. So with the TV in there, so that's basically our setup. But if I had to do it in the dugout, it's really not any different. You know what I mean? So it's, and I know different places have like an actual meeting space at their facility. Ours just happen to be it's a locker room setup with the TV. But I do think even from a high school standpoint, like I think it's probably a worthwhile investment of, all the tech things you might invest in or equipment things. I think from a budget line item, if you spend $200 and get a pretty good TV, I think there's a good return on that for sure.
Yeah. And that was my next thing with thinking about like how you do it. Like, is that, so do you have classroom sessions? Are those classroom sessions, like when you're in your locker room with your TV, is that every day before practice that you're doing it? Or do you have like these specific times when you're having
Yeah.
classroom?
It's not every day. So I would say it's definitely as needed. So if there's a time that I feel like we haven't quite grasped something, and even this weekend, like I said, there were a couple, and the good thing is it exposed us. Like, I'm glad those moments came up. And even as the game's going, I'm like, this is hurting us. Like, we might not win this game because we've given the other team 4 outs on our inability to like run the bases correctly today. So it was like, as the game's going, I'm like, at least we can cut this up and give them something, win or lose. Like, we can use this to our benefit down the road. So I think from that standpoint of just when we do it, it's definitely an as needed. There are some things beginning of each semester, I'll basically set team meeting stuff. Sometimes videos will be attached to that. And then even the preseason this year, just on certain years when we start to do things year to year to year, if you've been here for 2, 3, 4 years, like those guys are so helpful to communicate this message in future years. But like in year one, we really do have to kind of go step by step with everything we do as a team. So it forces us to maybe meet and be a little more meticulous to go through everything we want to cover. And I would say the video during the preseason segment, some of it's baseball stuff, but other thing it's, we'll show a clip of Villanova basketball team that won it in 2017. And there's just a good little summary of what that team was about. But it's one of those messages that you could attach it to any sport and it would be beneficial. You know what I mean? You could cut and paste the messaging of that Villanova team, how they were wired, and just how that helped them in the biggest moment where they're playing in a championship game. So it is usually baseball, but we'll tap into other stuff of be like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like I understand that. And they can definitely pull that into the baseball side of things.
Yeah, I like that. It's not just like you said, not just the baseball stuff, but you can bring in all kinds of different examples, and I think you said like as needed. So if I do need you said an example of how well this team was kind of structured, because maybe you're feeling like they're not really kind of together. So that's what it sounds like. You're kind of bringing that in, here's what it is, like as needed. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the, like I said, every team is unique to themselves. You know what I mean? As soon as you change one personality, it's the team dynamic could change. One guy goes and a new guy's in. But I do think there's some of those underlying principles, like anybody that's involved in athletics as an athlete and like as a coach, like you basically know what the good teams are going to do. You really do. There's a certain way those teams are wired, and there might be little style of play quirks or little even personality quirks. Some might be a little more bold, some might be a little more reserved. But when it comes down to it, usually it's talent that goes about it a certain way is usually the gist of it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Good. So like, oh man, just so as a growing the culture and just like, man, I'm just thinking about like, just with, do you really, how much, because it sounds like to me like how much of like the culture talks do you like to have, or is it like year one where you're just like gung ho, like here's all the baseball, like try to bring in all like I'm just thinking, how are you balancing all of the different culture stuff with all of like the specific baseball stuff and skills you're trying to grow?
There's definitely a mix, but I think there's also like a natural overlap. Like if you're getting some of those on the field things right and just the way guys go about their business, like some of that, like they're learning themselves. And when I reference like, doing the right thing and the focus and effort thing, like if we can do that in a practice setting, and even on a day where it just feels like, this is like the practice number 22 of the fall, and it's just like the practice itself, like it's easy. It's one of those practices that feels like guys can just kind of go into autopilot, but just like attaching something to that to challenge them and just get them in the moment with the stuff. But I think that from strictly from a baseball standpoint, but I also think you can carry that over to other pieces, like being dialed in, giving effort, regardless of the circumstances, I think can really like set the tone for your team. And the good people thing, like kind of the same deal there, like as mishaps or whatever on the field that you want to tighten up. Like I said, if you might go to a video, you might go to a message or try to show something to reinforce what it should look like. It's kind of the same. Like there's some core things like, yeah, we want to do the right thing. We want to be good people. But I think just as needed, coming back to that message and almost not overdoing the culture and, creating a thing where like guys have to feel like, oh, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, and last year again, the team was 12-41 last year. You know what I mean? And this is the group that we're taking over. And, we hit on some of that stuff since the Division I transition when I met with the team, but it was never to beat them up or to belittle the culture they had. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't here and I don't know exactly like, was it just the other team more talented or whatever it might be. So it just, for me, it's not even about changing culture. It just established my culture. It just, when I say my culture, it's our culture of like, I really try not to complicate it too much. And I feel like I will give guys room to be themselves, but I do expect them to grow. And the things that I do give them, the expectation is they're going to do them to a high level. And again, I don't know for sure, like it's not going to be 100%, but I feel like most guys that have played in, programs that I've coached, I feel like could at least say like, yeah, felt like I had a chance to be myself. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he was always trying to change me. So it was that freedom. And again, I want to see guys grow. So that doesn't mean like be yourself. And there's been plenty of freshmen, sophomores that are like, that kid's got a ways to go, but it just saying it to them and coaching them through it to try to just help them as an individual. And then that comes back, in that full team setup. There's a good return on that stuff. And I honestly think too, and this is, and I totally get where coaches are saying it. Even for me too, I do want the idea of like the name on the front of the jersey. Like, yes, it's really, really important. Like I'm all for that. Like, yes, but like there's something about depending on what's going on in someone's life, I don't want to minimize like the name on the back of the jersey. So even for me, anywhere I've been, Westchester, assistant at William & Mary, assistant at Delaware, head coach at North Alabama, like I have great pride in those programs. And like, yep, the logo means a lot, but I never want our logo to get in the way of like the well-being of a human. You know what I mean? So like I have like a truly like looking out for people. And that doesn't mean like that kid has the right to like not do anything correctly. But the gist of it is I'm not going to cast aside somebody if I think they're willing to grow, if that makes sense. So that's like something that I think over the years, I feel like I'm more in tune with that. And I think some of I don't want to call it selfish, but I think from a reflection standpoint, like if you have a chance to help somebody's like whatever the course of their life might be, if you have the willingness to work with somebody through something of just like slightly redirecting that life, like I think from that standpoint, I think it's really important instead of basically trying to find ways to, to cast away people like, oh, you messed up. And it's the same in recruiting sometimes. Like, yeah, there's certain kids that we probably won't recruit, but at the same time, like I'm not going to fields looking for reasons to cross kids off. You know what I mean? Like it's when I was a 16-year-old kid in high school, like whatever. I don't feel like I did anything awful, but at the same time, like I just remember doing some stupid stuff as a 16-year-old or saying stupid stuff out of the dugout. And like, I wouldn't want to be judged on that, for, my college career, whatever that might be. So I think I'd look at it more as like a chance for me to help somebody out. And even the recruiting process, I would have those talks with guys sometimes too. Like we might be on a guy, I go watch him, or we're just starting to get to know him. And maybe they do something that isn't something we necessarily like. I'll just talk with the kid about it and just kind of get to the bottom where he's at with it and just let him know, like, it's really not what we're looking to do. And just so we get on the same page with the stuff.
That's so good. I've actually heard teachers say that too, along the lines of like you talking about, I'm not going to the field looking to cross guys off. Like I've had teachers, and one of the most impactful teachers I work with was, she said, I'm not in the business of failing kids. You know what I mean? It's not that she didn't have high expectations for kids either. That's how she was taught to, that was her philosophy, and like how much she cared, kind of said about just kind of the willingness to help someone when they might be going through something.
And I'm even willing to get it wrong. If the kid is so conniving and he like pulls a fast one on me, it's the kid that like you spend like years trying to get it right with them, or months or weeks, whatever. And if one kid gets it past me, but if that allows me to help 12 other kids, like, so be it. You know what I mean? If the one kid, like, so it just, I'm comfortable with that too. Like, oh, I pulled a fast one on coach. I'm like, well, you really didn't. Cause it's like, you're going the route you're going, but it's just, if we're able to make those adjustments to other guys, like I'm all for that. So.
Oh, that's cool, man. Like, was there something like that impacted you in order to gain that kind of philosophy?
You
just don't hear guys talking much about, like, you know what I mean? Sure. Like kind of letting them be the.
I think over time, I think over time, the more I do this, the more I have appreciation for it. I think even just like whatever upbringing and even just perspective stuff and just ability for people to change, seeing some of those things up close in my life where like, yeah, this person wasn't making good decisions, but it just also given them the flexibility of, yeah, they can change for the better. You know what I mean? And I do want to help people like in the industry. I really do. And I think that's a good question. Like, but I think it would probably go back to even that side of it of like, yeah, people can change. And it's nice when you get to see people on the other side of that thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you're at such an impressionable age that you're putting guys on a path, that you really truly get to see them becoming the men that they're going to be for longer than, for a long time. So it is super cool. Those college years, man, they are impressionable. I teach middle school. Yes, it's impressionable, but like, you can at college, man, you're going to make or break your next 10 years pretty easy.
Yeah. And that difference from 18 to like 22, 23, like it is a drastic difference.
Yeah. Just the brain development, and that's scientifically proven. The brain development.
Oh yeah, it is. And it's just all of it, what actually is going on in the body combined with the experiences they have in that stretch. And even that first jump, honestly, like that freshman to sophomore year, sometimes you have kids come back the fall of their sophomore year, and it seems like they're 4 years older already, depending on the kid a little bit. So.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's such a unique. I've heard guys talk about, guys being their own self-coach and things like that. You hear a lot of those kind of things and player-led and da-da-da. But just the way that you explain that about giving those guys to really be themselves. And you said, and I'm curious about what you said about, I just expect guys to grow. And so my I guess, just for me, like I'm thinking about how to manage that, like how do you, like when you're holding them accountable to that, how do you hold to get accountable to growing?
Sure. I think little checkpoints, and it's kind of a simple one, could be one, like, can you truly lead yourself? So I guess I'll start with that. Do you have the ability to follow through on all the things that are asked of you? And I think the next step of that would just be the ability to help somebody else out. Like the ability of once when you can lead yourself, like, do you have the ability to help basically that guy that was that you might have need help? Can you help that guy out as a checkpoint of, you got your stuff together, but now there's this freshman over here that, he's basically in the same shoes you were in maybe the year before, and he might be struggling with certain things. And like, can you help that guy out with some stuff? So I think that could be one, like a growth indicator. And I think some guys are just in such different spots of their lives. So obviously we're getting people from different parts of the country, and, we have guys from 12 different states here. And I think we have guys from a pretty good mix of, I feel like from one standpoint, I feel like a lot of our guys in that standard upper middle class kind of baseball upbringing, but I think we do have a mix of guys from different backgrounds. And I think for each guy, like they have different challenges. So the growth for one guy might look different than somebody else. And, I feel like I walked into a situation here, like there's a handful of guys here, or maybe even more, that I feel like are rock solid. You know what I mean? It's just like, I can tell that they're wired a certain way. Like, not that we don't have to coach them, not that we don't have to help them.
Sure. No, they're self-driven.
Exactly. But it's just like, they are dialed in, like they want to get it right. And whatever we give them, and you got to be careful too, because you got to make sure you're giving them the right stuff, because they are 100%, like they're going to be dialed into you. But you can tell pretty quickly, who is self-driven and, who can take care of their own stuff. We have a good group of guys that are in that category, and like any roster I've been a part of, we have some guys that are probably in the middle, and we probably have a few guys that they need that like aha moment, like I got to get my stuff together. And this fall was no different. Like we had some guys, whether it's following through on some academic stuff or just certain things not following through on, like we had to have some of those conversations. And some of those will happen, behind closed doors, one-on-one. And other times, same idea. It's not to belittle people, and we're not going to name exact names, but the gist of it is like talking to the full team about making sure we're meeting the expectation of the group. So, and I think guys have been very receptive, which has been good. Some of those guys have got off to a good start this semester academically. So it's year one here, but guys are doing a good job with following through and making some adjustments.
So I guess, like you said, about the follow through is the conversations with guys. And so like those conversations happen as needed, or like you said, with the team.
Yeah. And some of those they'll be scheduled conversations. We'll meet with guys, like definitely an end of the semester check-in. We'll have those, and we'll have an end of the year. Like those are scheduled, and the other ones from a one-on-one standpoint, if we need to have that, if we need to have that conversation to get somebody straightened out a little bit, we're definitely willing to do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. How has just like here's a question, like, as I'm going back to like your don't flinch, body language, coming into like, this is the the highest level you've coached at,
Yep.
right? And so like, is there a part of you like says like, this is what I'm also going to model? Like, this is what kind of where you're at. You know what I mean?
It's a great question. And it's like a self-challenge to me. And I know for me, I'm at my best when I'm thinking clearly. So there's times when I'm not getting caught up in the moment, good or bad. And I really try to overtrain myself. And there's times like, I know it, like, it's just, I'm so dialed into what's next, or I try to be dialed into what's next, that I'm not like, I'm moving past whatever just happened. So it just says, as our guys are doing some celebration stuff, like I'm trying to get their attention to make sure they're dialed into what's next. Or if it's one of those crazy calls where we feel like we got screwed by an umpire, like, yeah, if I have to go out to talk to them about it, I will. But like once when that's done, I just hate playing the what if game. Like, if we would have got that call, this. Like, I like just swallowing whatever's in front of us, and like we're going to dig in, do our best with that moment, and that's it. So that's one of my checkpoints, like during a game and like after a game, like, did I actually do that? And I do feel like, again, it's something I'm dialed into it. Like I try to be really good with that. So like most games, I feel like I accomplished that, but there's always moments, like there's definitely decisions I wish I had back along the way. Obviously, like you're not going to hit the right button, and like, but it is like, that's part of the fun of anybody that's been in the dugout and had to make like baseball decisions in big moments. It's a very specific, like you have to be dialed into that stuff. You really do. And like the people that do it, and like, part of the fun of the game. It really is. And another cue we'll give our guys, like after a mistake, and I've heard this years ago, and again, it's, keep your head up, like kind of but it's like a specific, like eyes up, head up, chin up. Like if you have a miscue, instead of like, if you need a second to kind of do a little kick the dirt, get your mind right, I'm good with that. But it is like, have your eyes up, your head up, and your chin up, and go get the next thing, whatever that is. But it does. If somebody kicks a ball and they're like looking at the ground for the next 12 seconds, like that tells me like they're not on to what's next.
Yeah.
So I'll give guys, they get a moment, but after that it is eyes up, head up, chin up. And like, you got to be connected with the rest of the team, ready to make the next play, basically.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I just think it's your leadership coach. I didn't think like, like I'm just going to show that I'm not flinching. Like this isn't just words that you're trying to speak. I think you're trying to develop the trust, and you're like, look, I'm here doing the same thing. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's where, you're also, we're not going to flinch because I'm not, and I'm going to make sure that I'm doing it. I'm right here. Like they need to see it from you. For sure.
And I think it's, it's as you know, like, if you're not living out the things you're looking for from your guys, like you're sending some mixed messages, and it's, you never as a coach, do you want to become a distraction, and we feel like it's our job to like make the game easier. The game's hard enough for the guys.
Yeah.
Like, the last thing they need to do is for a coach to make it more challenging. So it's, it's our job is to try to break the game up into ways that it just slows the game down for them. And just the game straight up by itself, like it's a super challenging game. Mm-hmm. There's so much time that you have to think about things, and like the game itself is tough, but even the downtime, like you could have those 2 tough at bats, and you're waiting, another hour and 8 minutes to get your third at bat. And like, it's just a lot of things can go through your head. And I think it just, the best baseball guys that I've been around from a player standpoint, there's some common themes too about just the way they handle the ups and downs of the game, for sure.
So that what you would say? Like you would say like a common theme would just be the way they stayed neutral?
It's even neutral, but it's staying true to what's best for them. And I've never been around a baseball guy where like overdrive. I'm like the best guys on teams I've coached. It's never been the guy that's on total overdrive. Is like, oh, that's the guy. Could that guy help you in like a game or a weekend or even a month? Like, yeah, but I just feel like when it comes down to it, at the end of the year, usually your more stable people are going to be the guys that are going to like lead your ship, basically. The other good analogy, and I don't know, it might be dated now, but I did hear like this was going back probably 10 years when I heard it. It was like the Boston Celtics team that had Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen. there was basically a sports psych person that worked with that team, and like he referred to it as hype level. So if you go that was the big three. So Kevin Garnett, Pierce, Allen, and he said the key to those guys they were at their best when they're in their right hype level. So if you run through it, Garnett, really intense, carried himself a certain way, but like he was a hyper intense guy on the court, but that's what worked for him. Paul Pierce was intense, but also had kind of that quiet go about it to him, but he was kind of somewhere in the middle. And then Ray Allen was the definition of just a flatliner that would just, he was somebody that you couldn't tell what was going on. If he was 8 for 9 for threes or 1 for 10 for threes, like Ray Allen was just going to do Ray Allen. And like, but the idea was those three guys, 3 different hype levels is what he referred to it as, but they would stay in their area, like their zone often. And that's what made that, those guys individually in that team tough is like, you can't tell Ray Allen to act like Kevin Garnett, and you can't tell Kevin Garnett to act like Ray Allen, because you're going to end up getting a negative return on that stuff. But I think that's another good example of like coming back to let the guy be themselves, unless it gets to that extreme side of it where it's too much in one direction.
Yeah. Well, or you just get bad feedback, like, Kevin Garnett will say, yeah, it worked for him because the feedback was there. He was a really good player. He had good results.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of. If you're not getting good results, it's time to maybe change something up. Maybe it might not be working for you. For sure. Oh man, that's good. So I'll just oh man, that was really good. Just saying, I think that, man, it's such a great thing of just players that stay true to what's best for them. It's such a great way to put it, instead of guys being, like just saying what's true is best for them. You have guys that can be up or be down, or getting in the right hype level. It's really cool. And like, man, just trying to see how you help. Like, is that something that you try to get your guys to try to find what works best for them?
A little bit. And I think there's, and I do think in that space, there's still expectations. And this is where I get a little picky from a baseball standpoint.
Yeah.
I do need them on to the next play. And these would be observational things. And this is something that I've referenced in the past. I remember being at a junior college World Series. This was 2011 down in Enid, Oklahoma for the Division II World Series. And I was there scouting when I was with William and Mary. Towards the end of the day, most of the game I was behind home plate. Towards the end of the day, I just went down the right field line a little bit, grabbed a seat at like one of those picnic tables. Just watching a game unfold, it just like, and this is stuff that I knew as a coach, like living it, but having a chance to not be consumed with the outcome of the game. Like I'm there scouting, but I'm basically taking the game in borderline as a fan. Like I'm just watching a good game, keeping an eye out for players. But as I just watched a bunch of little things happen in a small amount of time, when I say little things, they add up and they make the difference in games. And some of it was that hype level, like guy hits a double that it either tied the game or cut it to 1, and he's at second doing the bow and arrow to the dugout. The ball's in play, it's getting overthrown, like kicking up against the wall. Like he should be at third base is the gist of it. Wasn't at third base. That same base runner at second, the next hitter is trying to bunt him over, and the base runner bites on basically a fake crash, like a pick play at second that was really just a bunt rotation play. But he's like darting back to second as the pitch is getting thrown, and he can't advance to third on a bunt. And I'm just like, one, if that guy had the bright base running read, he's at third. Mm-hmm. 2, after the moment, if he could just do a good job with his secondary and advance to third, he's there with a chance to take the lead. But it's just like, if that guy gets it right, it could change the outcome of this JUCO World Series. You know what I mean? So I think the gist of it was, if you got a team to truly buy into all that stuff and coach them up on every little decision they make on a field, you become a really difficult team to play against, almost regardless of talent. So even if the other team rolls in and like, oh yeah, we're better than these guys, but if you get everything right for a 7 or 9 inning game, it's a tough thing for the opposition to deal with. And I think that's the ultimate is you end up getting the more talented roster and you play to that style. And that's why kind of coming back to hype level, I never want hype level to get in the way of getting what's right. You know what I mean? It's more just that between inning demeanor, or just, the guys like, give them some flexibility. Some guys need that certain energy, But it's just when it comes down to like, can you be dialed in for the whole time? That piece is critical for me.
Such a cool way of saying it, man. Like it was just I enjoyed this, man. I just really cool. Such a yeah, man. How so? What do you practice? What do you practice like? How are you able to put even maybe these kind of situations to help deal where you're kind of monitoring that kind of hype level?
Sure.
Like how do you bring that out of them to where you can kind of help teach it?
Yep. The skill level, skill development stuff. That's a given, obviously. You know what I mean? From that standpoint, and I won't even hit on that here. The more I do, the more I coach, the more like circling back to the decision-making stuff is so important. And some of that is like, yeah, at the plate, swing, take decisions, but base running decisions, defensive decisions, and trying to get guys into basically just stack different game situations and then force them to get live reads, whether that's in BP or we run a base running drill a certain way where we're getting live reads. I think that stuff is so critical because it gives you a chance to rep it out. You know what I mean? If you just play straight up baseball, inter squad, even a coach pitch, and you just like let it go, you might not get to certain situations enough. But it's just if you want to cycle through a certain situation, like are we tagging on this ball, for example? Like what's our read here? You just set it up, whether it's a machine, a fungo, or maybe you do it in a coach pitch, but you just put runners at these spots. This is what we're looking to do. And then we just rep the thing out till we get it right. And again, that comes back to some of the stuff we hit on earlier, in a way as needed. So, there's things that we want to cover, but it just, as we get more comfortable at one thing, then we can kind of move on to make sure we get something else right. So it's kind of picking what the team needs, but also, I would say also making sure we're repping the things that are going to show up most in the game. So making sure we're getting enough reps of the things that could impact our games on the highest level of frequency stuff.
And I for sure like that because that kind of brings me into like you said, you did some base running mishaps this weekend and that. So
Yep.
That's essentially you're going to stack those game situations up and kind of recreate that, and so you can rep it out during practice.
Correct. Yep, exactly that. And some of it was just that specific rep of what your read is. Trying to score on a ground ball from third with the infield up and, depending on your read, like what we're looking to do with that stuff. And then even like a tag, no tag situation, like if you're not tagging on a certain ball, then you should be getting out there as much as you say maximize. So the term halfway basically would only be if halfway equaled the exact distance that you could get without getting doubled up if the guy catches it. So like the term we'll use for that is maximize, and that's something we'll rep out a ton. You are getting as much as you possibly can, where if the guy catches it, not that we want to bang play with you sprinting back, but if you can jog back to the base comfortably, you did not do your job as a base runner.
You didn't maximize.
Exactly right. And it's whether it's ball in the air or ball being thrown like that. And that's an example of that type of play. The return on that, literally it's going to be thousands of time in the course of a season if you run through it, of base runners having to make a read, whether it's a ball in the air, ball on the ground, a thrown ball where you're at another base reading the play. You're basically always just working. It's almost like a secondary lead with the ball going to a different base. If that makes, you know what I mean? Like you're not just camped on your base. Like you're getting off just in case that ball gets away far enough where you can move up that next base. And the return on of it is like when that shows up and your team's dialed into it, you have a lot of chances to cash in on that for sure.
Maximize. Well, another great one. Just a great word, Coach. Good gravy. Oh my. Maximize. Like I was like halfway, and you're just like maximize. Like heck yeah. And I even think it because it's much more. It's not as passive. Yeah, it's much more. I would say aggressive, but like it just. It makes you think more.
It does. And it's one of those things, even if the opposition knows you're doing it, like it's not a groundbreaking thing. It really isn't. It's basically what we all want as coaches.
Yep.
But it's just we're willing to spend a good amount of time to try to make sure we get that thing right. Just because the return on it, I think, is so good when things go a certain way. It gives you your best chances to move up max bases and to always cash in on whether it's a mistake or that ball you're not quite sure on. Just having the discipline to stay out there until you see what happens with the ball.
Oh, yeah, it's great. You typically like to do base running right away? Like you'll stretch and throw? Like how do you kind of mix that in? Is it
Depends on the day. I mean, it does depend on the day a little bit. And sometimes the base running would be baked into our BP, as I mentioned, or it might be baked into our like a coach pitch segment.
Yeah.
But there are certain days where base running, we will hit on it, even from like a practice flow standpoint. It even gives our pitchers some times in the outfield where we're getting some base running stuff done. And sometimes we'll do base running with live defense. And other times it's more of a mechanic thing of, this is what we're looking to do and just repping out some of those things. But we do, and we try to make it a part of every practice, and just how big of a piece it varies day to day a little bit.
It really seems like it's a pretty big staple, something you really enjoy. It definitely is something that wins or loses games is very well taught. I think good clubs always have good base running.
They do, yeah. There's no doubt about it, and I've heard the cross sport analogy from a base running standpoint. Some people refer to it as like the special teams of football.
Yeah,
like the special teams of baseball. And I agree with that concept, but I almost think it doesn't give enough justice. I actually think base running is more what type of offense do you run? Like you know what I mean? Are you a spread offense? Do you like to ground pound it or whatever? Like, are you an option offense? Are you 5 wide? And I think base running is actually bigger than special teams. I don't think does its justice because I think it really is your identity as an offensive club. A lot of times it shows up on how you run the bases.
Mm-hmm. I think it also tells you the type of teachers you got.
It does. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, for sure.
Yeah, and the development system, for sure. How are you able to, like just another thing, because it's something I think it's a big challenge. And honestly, I don't think our game, and we try to, get guys getting jumps and things like that. How do you get your guys, let's say base, because there's base, it's like base running and base stealing for me. Like, so I'm thinking of the base stealing side of things.
Sure.
And how you're repping that out to get guys more like how are you working on their jumps and things like that.
And I would say, so there's an area of my game, and even from a coaching development standpoint, still to this day, I acknowledge like I need to be better versed at the different base stealing options. And for me, it's I have a level of risk aversion. Like I know with certain combinations, like stealing bases is relatively safe. And if you teach it a certain way, like there's a really good return on it. But I also know certain teams can take that away from you. So I do want base stealing to be part of our identity, but it's something that we probably don't spend as much time on as the other stuff, just because the other stuff I feel like over the course of a season will have a better return. So it's like basically the high-end team, and you'll see some teams, their stats just scream like this team, the fact that the opposition, the opposition's like 21 for 38 in stolen bases against a certain team towards the end of the year. You just come across certain teams that aren't going to give you a chance to do it. They're going to be quick to the plate. They're going to vary looks. They'll have a catch and throw guy behind the plate. And if you're leaning on that as like your offense, for me, it just over the years, I feel like, and I know for sure we could do more with it. I say that, and I know we could steal more bases. The teams I had at Westchester, we definitely could have, but they just got to a point with the way those lineups were set up. I had so much, I just don't have that regret of like, why am I running into an out with some of the guys that we have? And I think there's other pockets of the game where we can get that extra base without making it a 70-30, 65-35 proposition kind of deal. So I think, again, I guess that's just a long way to say you would probably talk to a dozen coaches and 11 of them for sure would probably have better base stealing stuff than I would have for it.
No, and honestly, because it wasn't even so much that is like, I think, because I was getting to my next thing, it was like, you made such a great point about we do what's going to be the best return on investment. And that's what I was saying. Like, what are the top 5, like your top things that you do that you feel are going to give us the most bang for the buck?
Sure. Coming back to base stealing, I would say the guys that I've seen that have do it successful, it's like anything else in the game. So like the way a guy hits, like from a stance setup or maybe his timing mechanism, I do think having some base runners with some differences can be helpful. Like in regards to some guys might be a vault lead guy. Some guys might be, just a bigger straight up lead guy. And some guys are just really good at reading tendencies. And you know what I mean? It's almost like a self-taught thing where their instincts are really that good. But we've also played against teams that you can tell it's a systematic approach. Like everyone runs the bases or steals bases the same. And there's no doubt those teams are definitely tough to play with. And they're a pain because usually they recruit to that. Everybody runs like a 6'8" or better. Like those teams are tough to deal with. But that hasn't never really been the identity of the teams that I've led.
Yeah.
And when you say like return on investment, I think it's spending time on base running, no doubt about it, of just getting those moments right of those reads and like staying true to that maximize concept. That's critical for us. There's no doubt about it. We spend a good amount of time on dirt ball stuff. So that's also another critical piece for us. And I come back to that feels like almost a safer way to steal a base to me. If you hit that right, I just feel like you're going to be safe on that at a higher percent clip than, a traditional stolen base, basically.
Yeah. So like those are your base running things of like just the situational things, getting the right reads, and then your dirt ball reads. Like those are the big things that you're hammering out. Yeah. And then, so like, what are your, like, let's just say offensively, like you think about your offense, I'm sure like a lot of BP situations are probably what you mentioned is your biggest returns on investment. So like when you're taking BP, what is the thing that you're thinking of as the biggest returns?
And even on the offensive side, as I mentioned too, the decision-making stuff. So not that we won't have the feel-good BP. We'll still mix in the feel-good BP, but I also think the baseball BP has a better return. And when I say that, it's the challenges that come with it. So whether that's a stacked machine situation where it's like a fastball breaking ball machine, like basically side by side or on top of each other, and guys are making decisions and having an approach like that. And even for programs that don't have machines, like I even think a coach mix BP, like there's a much better return on that than just traditional fill it up 4-seam pat. Like, you know what I mean? Like they actually have to make a decision, have a plan. And one of the other ones too is even we would even mix in like a coach pitch scouting report. It would even be posting like, this is whatever coach is out there that day, like this is what you're looking for. This is like the likelihood you're going to see certain pitches. This is the pitch he likes to goes to ahead in the count, behind in the count. You can expect whatever. He might try to get fastballs in when he's behind in the count, but see if they can basically apply a scouting report in real time. And then sometimes getting off the scouting report and also letting them know like it's not always going to be perfect. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, it said on the sheet that he was going to try to bust me in on a 2-1 count, but it was a breaking ball away. I'm like, yeah, well, sometimes that's going to happen too. So I think just some of those things that'll show up on game day and just getting them comfortable with that stuff in a practice environment.
Nice. And then thinking about like defensive, I think you heard a lot of this on the infield side of things. You know, that's become pretty important, like practice things that matter the most, like in terms of the corner infielder, corner infielder rarely catches the ball two-handed, things like that. Sure. Yeah. So what is that where like, are you repping the certain situations out like that are just happening or even to this certain ground ball?
And that's a good lead into like, we try to get as many live balls as possible during BP. And I heard that years ago, it was, at a convention, it's like, even our best fungo guy just can't duplicate, you know what I mean? Like a middle of the order metal bat swing, like you just can't duplicate that type of ground ball. So I think getting those guys, as many of those as possible. And you're right, like trying to train certain lanes of fielding and, the range or the plays are going to show up on game day. Like we want to rep those things out the most for sure. And then attaching that decision-making stuff. So sometimes it'll be, even if we don't have live base runners, just giving them some of those internal clocks and, we'll categorize when we play teams, there'll basically be 5 different colors of runners from dark green to light green to yellow to orange to red, but just give them situations with dark green being the fastest, red being the slowest, and yellow would be basically an average runner. But just give them a situation. Like it's, a dark green guy in the box and a yellow runner here. And, we're just going to do some situational stuff. So they have to make some decisions based off timing and rhythm and those types of things.
I love so yeah, I just like because just how much the game's growing too. Like I think your teams have been very successful, and so the amount of game situations I think that you're putting your guys in, you're not scared of it. I think that's just something that will always need to continue to grow is just more game situations, in baseball. And some things it's just it's never been such a natural thing. We've got to really work at it.
It does, and I was a victim of that too. Of sometimes you organize practices so they fit perfectly, and you feel like the flow is good, and it's almost like a well-run football practice, whistles blowing or whatever it is, just like 10 minutes here, and then like even the drills we're doing, they're just so scripted. But it's like when the game starts, like there's random stuff happening. Like it's just on any given weekend there might be sequences of things like, I haven't seen that happen before in 20 years of a college baseball field, whatever it is. So you have to just embrace the randomness of getting off schedule and stuff. You know what I mean? Of just like,
Yeah.
the play gets messy sometimes, and like, instead of me freaking out and yelling about it, like, let's work through the mess. Like, let's play an overthrow live and like figure out who goes where and those types of things. We always want it to be clean, but honestly, on game day, like, you're usually going to deal with some stuff that you're going to have to work through for sure.
Yeah. Really, really, really good. Really, really good. Daggone, that's good. Just, Coach, just kind of like wrapping stuff up, man. Just we haven't really touched base too much on pitching or anything like that. I mean, I know you talked about your dude that you got, 2 dudes that you had pitching, but like in terms of pitching, I guess final thing is we've kind of talked about a lot. I'm just thinking about, again, how do you put more pitchers? Can you talk about coach pitch scrimmage? Like, how are you putting your pitchers in those game-like situations?
Sure. And on the pitching side, it is, especially in the preseason inter-squad stuff, if we have somebody going 2 or 3 innings, like building up pitch count stuff, if he has like 2 clean innings, like we're definitely going to put some traffic on for that next inning. And there's times like we'll go into it. It's just inning 1 might be clean, and then inning 2 we'll set a situation like it's first and third, 1 out. And
making him feel that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And even, and this is playing out in real time, the pitch clock thing is very real in college right now. So the rules that come with it and some of the little nuances of you're on the 20-second pitch clock now. So just that rhythm of getting guys comfortable working within those time frames. And even something as simple as like having the option to step off, get the sign. Like if you didn't get it the first time, like you only have 1 crack at it per hitter, and then it's a ball. Or if you're over the rubber and it's not 20 seconds, which generally speaking, 20 seconds is plenty of time. But as you know, like when you have 120 to 200 opportunities in some games to mess that up, sometimes guys are going to mess it up. So I think some of the newer rules, just practicing and repping those, just to get them game ready for that stuff. So we're not surprised by it. And the other, just I say pitching stuff in general, just coming back to the same deal. Like, it's like anything else on the field. The stuff that's going to win is talent. And on the mound, like, stuff is going to help you win, no doubt about it. Like, you need to have stuff, like good stuff on the mound. And you can break that down a lot of different ways, but it's pretty common themes like command your fastball, have a secondary pitch you can land for a strike and put it in a chase zone. But I think the other one too is, the best pitchers you go against and the best pitchers you coach, usually they're guys you trust. It's just guys from a demeanor standpoint. And I do think pitching, coming back to hype level stuff, I've seen different personalities on the mound win. Like I've seen true like bulldog guys you can tell are revved up. I've seen flatliners that like you can't get anything out of them, but you just know they're going to compete. And I've seen guys in the middle that, in certain situations they'll get revved up, but usually they're pretty even keeled. But it's, the guys that can handle the moment, like those are the guys you want to give the ball to. So even if it's their Rapsodo number, their TrackMan number doesn't spit out exactly what one guy might say his stuff, my stuff looks better, but the combination of what the hitter is doing against you and the way you handle moments, like that's it. The guys that you trust in the big moments, they're usually going to be wired a certain way.
That's good. That's really good. Hey, I was just thinking too, like, man, you had about like how you had built your lineups, right? To why you're not stealing certain bases, like, so do you have a certain way, like, I guess, like, how do you build your lineups, and is that really kind of based off of your individual, like your offensive philosophy, or is like you said, teams are different every year, but like, I'm just thinking about how you build your lineup when you mentioned that.
From an analytical standpoint, there are some like traditional things that I still like in a way. There's even apps out there now, and even companies that they help you. They can help you put together like sequencer. They can help you put together ideal lineup, and then even ideal bunt strategy per se, or steal. Like, should we try to steal a base here based off percentages? Like, there's a company that's dedicated themselves to like college baseball stuff, like for that. With that is, I think there's definitely value in that stuff, and I've looked at the stuff. We're not a subscriber to it, and that's not to say it's not a well worth investment. But I do like being aware of kind of what's out there, and like just even the thought between like getting one of your better hitters in the 2-hole, which usually it's a good hitter, But I think Aaron Judge isn't exactly like prototypical number 2 hitter on the days he's hitting second.
Right.
But it's just the way the lineup works and like opportunities. Like I think they've just come to like that's a good spot for him. You know what I mean? Of just they've come to grips with that's the right spot for Aaron Judge. So I think some of those things, we don't have Aaron Judge to put in the lineup, but just some of those things, some of those things of like where you put certain hitters, but even some of the game day decision stuff. I don't like from percentage standpoint, I like being aware of what numbers might tell me, but there's just certain things on certain game days like you just can't account for. You really can't. And it's just like the way a surface is playing, how valuable is a single run on this day? Is the wind blowing out? So like, like normally I might drag bunt here, but we're in Florida, the ground's rock hard, the wind's howling out, and it's a 2-run game, but it's 14-12. And like, we actually think we might need more than a single run. My light just went out here in the office. You can cut that out. I can finish in the dark.
That's so good.
But that's like the gist of, and that's why like I would never like bash on anybody for like, they're sacrifice bunting. Don't they know the run expectancy? Like on a certain day, like, we would play certain teams on certain days where I'm like, the best thing you can do is bunt on this day because it's an awful day to hit and make the opposition make a play on a cold, wet, drizzly day where the ball's going nowhere. Like that's the way you're going to win a game on a certain day. And then the opposite, like if you play for a single run on another day, like it might not be the best strategy. It just depends on the day. That's
a great point. That is such a good point. I love that. And that's the thing, like you said, that's what they can't take into account for, And is there a way that you're structuring your lineup like now that you maybe hadn't done or prior to?
I think being aware of some pocket stuff, almost like try not to stack high strikeout guys, low walk guys near each other. And sometimes it's hard within a lineup, like, it's hard to maybe keep 2 guys from being stacked. But like if you can stay away from that 3 guys being stacked of basically a lower contact rate, 3 guys in a row, just so it's not you get a runner on first and second or second and third, and it just plays out in a fashion where like 3 high strikeout guys strike out without putting a ball in play. So I think trying to break up some of those pockets. I do like, there's something to, I think having a lefty or a switch hitter in the 2-hole, I think there's something that leadoff guy gets on, you can create a little bit of a hole on the right side. Like I think there's a good return on that. So I think, if it's the right guy, I like having a lefty in the 2-hole if we have that. But, outside of that, it's kind of making the pieces work. And I do think, not to say a lineup won't change, but having some level of continuity, even from like directing the offense standpoint. So you almost get comfortable of knowing like, all right, like this guy's up, we can do this. And like, you start to like get a feel for like, you almost anticipate what your options are going to be before they show up. And I will say like our early season lineups have changed drastically. Yeah. So there are times now where like, I'm watching the guy hit and I'm like, I'm doing a double check on my lineup card or looking on the on deck circle. I'm like, I don't even know who's on deck. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like looking because I'm in real time. I haven't totally figured out like, this is our best 9-man lineup yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to happen because, like I said, you want to get to a point where you can have that continuity, right? Is that what you're saying? You're going to get to that point. Where
it is nice. Yeah. You're always going to have, ideally you're going to have somewhere between, 10 and 12 guys that are kind of your regulars. You might have some lefty righty options. You want some help at the catching position. Somebody's going to get nicked up. So you want at least, ideally, you're going to have a 12-man that you're going to lean on. In certain unique years, maybe it's 13, 14, but there's also other years, but it's only 9 or 10. And by the end of the year, you're like, this is my 9, or this might be the one extra guy I might play on a certain day. It's just a matter of making one decision within the lineup.
Coach Prachniak, just awesome stuff. Really appreciate all the time he spent with us and just being able to just be real, candid, have a great conversation about what he truly does. Just some great things. I just really wanted to highlight just how he mentioned, love the video stuff. I think it's so important. He's bringing that in. His information is how he's really trying to help and give everyone space and opportunities to become the best version of themselves. It was a great way he talked about. I loved his love his thought about how he doesn't come to the ball field looking to cross guys off. and understanding kind of where guys are in their life and knowing where he was, and just really touch base with me about not going to the field looking across guys off. And you say that a lot, guys talk about the high socks or high pants or just different things that they're doing. This is a great way of talking about that. Getting to the right hype level, finding your level and what's best for you. And again, all that really comes back with feedback. But finding the right hype level, where are you to kind of be able to compete the best? How are being more game-like, from the mixed coach pitch, scouting reports, stacking the machines, doing things that get the most return on investment. What are the things that we need to get really, really good at, spend the most time on, not trying to spend time on everything. Really, really awesome. Some quality stuff, and just can't thank him enough for giving us this time. And again, thank you to Netting Pros, the guys at Netting Pros, for continuing to sponsor us, help us out, grow the podcast, and most importantly, thank you guys for listening and supporting us. And again, feel free to reach out to me at any time, Coach3Cobb, or continue to follow the podcast and let me know however much we can help. And if you feel anybody would be a great conversation for us to have, and just love to talk baseball and continue to grow the game. So until next time, keep getting better.